Hi, my name is Hannah, and I'm here to share my first trimester journey. It has been quite a journey. I had no idea all these things happened during the first trimester, but I'm here to tell you my story for it to be helpful for you. I don't want to scare you, but I also don't want I also want to tell you that these things did happen to me and I'm fine now. So like maybe it could be a little bit of an encouragement if you're going through something similar, or if you just want to know everything of what to expect. Okay, so we got married end of April this year, 2024, and my last menstrual cycle, which apparently is really, really important. Everybody asks you, like when you go to the doctor, I think it was June 23rd. So then my due date, they calculated that from that, it's like March 30th. I checked, I got 2 pregnancy tests. I do recommend getting 2 because I tested it the first time, it was like a very faint line. And then I checked a couple days later, and then it was like bright blue line, like you're pregnant. And so I was like, okay, yay. I mean, I showed it to Joe, my husband, and he was excited. And I think we were both kind of like, so there's a baby now, I'm pregnant. Like, I think it wasn't much of like, oh my gosh, we're pregnant, yay. Like, I think we were both, well, I think he was a little bit more excited than me, but I was more like, okay, I guess I'm pregnant now. And yeah, so that's what happened. And I don't have a OBGYN. I've never gone to one my entire life. I don't even have a PCP. So yeah, I just don't like going to the doctors, especially because I don't know how much it will cost me. Like even though like insurance tells you it will cost this much, it's always like an estimated amount, or like everything could change, and every time you process it, it's different. I'm just like, you know what it feels like to me? It feels like going to a restaurant and there's all these great stuff on the menu and they recommend getting me all these things and it sounds amazing, but there's no price next to it. So it's just like, all right, like you're telling me to get all these things, but I'm going to be the one paying the check and you're not telling me how much it is until I get it. Like, would you go to a restaurant like that? No. I'm also dog sitting and he might be snoring a little bit. But so yeah, so that's why I didn't have an OBGYN, and I was like, maybe I could just go through the entire pregnancy not going to see an OBGYN. Wouldn't that be fun? I was like, oh, I mean, like people in the past have not gone ever. They just gave birth, and pretty sure all the complications and stuff was mostly from like the bleeding, like the death, like the maternal death thing. It's like mostly from the bleeding that comes while in delivery and labor. And so I will be at the hospital then, so I'll be fine. I'll go to the hospital, definitely. I'll go to the hospital. But before then, I was like, is it really necessary? And like even for like the gender thing, I'm like, I could just find out the day I give birth. Isn't that fun? Kind of fun, exciting, a little different. I usually just like doing something different. So, and presumably risky because I don't know what's the fun in doing everything that's uber safe. Like there's no fun in doing safe things. Like what's the point of that? So yeah, so then I was like, yeah, I wasn't in a rush to find an OBGYN, but I was like, I should look for one, but when I have to, I'll do it. Okay. And then I think it was like week 6, Joe and I have sex. And I do feel like it's a little bit like uncomfortable while it's happening. And after like he pulls out, like we Joe is like, oh my god, and there's like a huge, not a huge, but there's like blood stain on the bed. So I'm like, what the heck? And like I was just like, and I was bleeding. I could definitely feel myself bleeding at that point. And then I was like, oh my god, like what is going on? I'm pregnant. Well, the CVS test told me I was pregnant. I missed my period. It's been like 2 weeks since I was supposed to have my period, so I'm pretty sure I'm pregnant. And I'm bleeding now. And so I was like kind of freaking out. He was a little freaked out, and like, but I was like, well, maybe like we'll just sleep it off and it'll be fine. So, and it wasn't like crazy amount of blood. It was bleeding, and like I think we Googled and we're like, oh, it's like some spotting is like normal, like early pregnancy during intercourse, and we're like, okay, like yeah, maybe it's normal. And then we're like, and so we go to bed. I wake up. I put a pad on, and I had a bar class that morning at Equinox. You know, if you go to Equinox, you can't really cancel last minute, otherwise you get a penalty. So I went to the bar class while I was bleeding, and I was like, maybe this is not a great idea, but I want to go to bar class. I signed up for it. I want to go. And so I went, came back. Bleeding was getting worse. I was working. This was probably around like 10 a.m. this after Joe left for work, and I was also working remotely. And then I was like telling my teammates, I was like, actually, like I have to go to urgent care because I was starting to bleed a lot. And then I texted Joe. I was like, I'm bleeding a lot. I'm just gonna go to the urgent care to see what's happening. Oh, also, I think this morning, that morning, I think I was also getting scared. And we're just hoping the bleeding would stop. And I do remember like crying with Joe, and like he was like not knowing what was happening. I don't know what was happening, but I mean, if you're bleeding while you're pregnant, like you feel like you're losing your baby. So I was like trying not to freak out, but I was freaking out. Joe was freaking out. And so I ended up going to urgent care. Urgent care is like, it was useless, honestly, like waste of my time. They're like, I think they like measured my oxygen level and like blood pressure, and they did a pregnancy test. And this is all like the technician, like the doing it. And then the PA comes in. She's like, you should go to you should go to the emergency room now. And so I'm like, okay. I'm like crying now. I'm like, what the F is going on? And so I go to the emergency room. I think I walked, it's about 10 blocks away. I went to Lenox Hill. Urgent care was on like 86th Street or something. So I walk to emergency room. I'm calling Joe. I'm like crying. Get there. I give them the papers. They ask me the same questions all over again. When was your last menstrual cycle or something like that? And then I give them all the stuff from urgent care, and I wait and wait forever. I think I waited like 6 hours. They basically just was waiting for me to go to ultrasound. And gosh, that was a painful waiting time. Like, I was in the waiting room. Like, they told me to change into a gown, so I'm in the gown. They put an IV line in, and I'm just like, but I feel more blood coming out, like a lot. And like, it's not like period blooding. It feels like a gush of blood. And like, I go to the bathroom to like use the bathroom to like get more blood out, because it's kind of just easier, so it doesn't like stay in your pad. And like there's like clunks of what it looks like tissue, like clunks of blood, and I'm just like, what the heck is this? Like the baby's head. Like, it's just like, what is coming out of me? It's like, it was insane. And like, you just feel this huge rushes of blood coming out. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I feel like this is like, it felt like I was losing the baby. And like, I was crying a lot out of like fear, out of like, I don't know what's happening. So yeah, I think the more time passed, the more heavier and like more stronger like the rush of blood was. So then I was crying even more, and like it took me so long to get an ultrasound. I go to ultrasound. It was my first time at ultrasound in my life. So like I think I hear the heartbeat, but I'm not sure. So I'm still like tearing, I'm still bleeding. And then I think, so she first did the ultrasound, like the normal one with the gel, and then the second she did the transvaginal. It was like, it was almost only at 6 weeks, so it was really, really, really tiny baby. But yeah, and then after the transvaginal, I was like, is the baby still there? Is it still there? And then she's like, yeah, it's still there. So I was like, okay. But like, it was still coming from the technician. I was like, I just really wanted to hear from a doctor or a physician that the baby's still okay. So I waited. I went down, and the attending finally told me that it was okay. So I was like, oh my gosh. I was literally like when the attending told me like, yeah, it's fine, like whatever that's coming out, there's probably blood clots, it's probably not tissue. And I was like, literally like just cried. Like I held myself together after a couple seconds, but when she said that, I was just like so relieved. And like, yeah, and that was a whole day. Like, yeah, I mean, I left for urgent care around 10 a.m. I think I got home around 5 p.m. So yeah, I mean, that work day was a wash. Like, thankfully, like my coworkers definitely covered for me because it's like an emergency sick day, and I didn't even know what was happening. I told them in the morning I'll be back soon. I was gonna go to urgent care, I'll be back, and then ended up being a whole thing. So yeah, and that continued. The bleeding continued for about 2 weeks, I would say. Definitely the amount slowed down, but like there was like a weird burst at the end, like end of 2 week period. It was like all of a sudden bleeding a lot again. I was like, are you freaking serious? But after that, it was done. No more bleeding. I was okay, back to normal pregnancy. And then so I went to the ER at week 6. And then so I went to I found an OBGYN. I think I went around week 8 or 9-ish. It was also kind of hard to find an OBGYN. It's just like a list of people online. I'm like, I don't know how to pick. But so I found an OBGYN, and I go there week 9. And so they're like, you've never had an OBGYN appointment before? I'm like, nope. And then they're like, oh, so you've never gotten a pap smear? I'm like, no, I've never gotten a pap smear. And they're like, okay. So they're like, why don't we just do all the tests that we normally do while you're here, since it's your first appointment? And I'm just like, all right, I mean, like, I'm already here, just do everything that you need to do, that you think I should do, it's fine. And so I got my first pap smear of my life, and this is the second event in my first trimester pregnancy. My doctor frantically calls me like a week later, and she calls me, and I'm like, hello. And she's like, Hannah, the results came back abnormal cells. Like, and she's like really concerned, like you could just hear it in her voice, like her tone. She was like, and I just felt such like a sense of urgency in her voice, especially because I think I was pregnant, and whatever it was, I think she wanted to take care of it ASAP. She's like, can you come in tomorrow? Can you come in the next day? Like sometime this week. Like she called me Wednesday. She's like, can you come in like tomorrow or Friday? So I said, yeah, I can come in anytime, because I was also freaking out. I was like, why is she so freaking out? So I went in the next day. Wait, no. I think I went in on Wednesday. I think she called me Tuesday. I went in on Wednesday. I bring Joe with me. I go in. Joe's outside because he's like taking more calls and stuff. And she examines me and she says, she's like concerned. Her voice is, again, even more concerned. And I'm just like, okay. Like I usually have a pretty stern face, and like I try to not show any emotions, especially at the hospital or at a clinic setting. And she's like saying all these things like, oh, it looks really bad. I thought it was this, but you're bleeding a lot more than normal. I try to do the biopsy, like a very like quick biopsy you could do at a doctor's office. And she said, oh, I was gonna get 3 different biopsies, like different areas, but I could only do 1 because you're bleeding too much. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like hypervascularization, that's bad. Like I learned that in school. And so I'm like, okay. And like she's like, I'm going to talk to an oncologist. I want to keep you in touch with her and like get her to see you immediately. And I come out. Joe was like, okay, so like is everything fine? And I'm just like, no. He's like, what? And so we go back. On our way home, I'm telling him all the things that she told me about, like, I don't even remember exactly, but she was like telling me all the stuff that could go wrong basically, and that it could be cervical cancer and that it could impact the baby and like blah blah blah. And Joe was like starting to get freaked out because I could tell it in his voice. He was like saying a bunch of stuff, like more and more stuff, more stuff and more stuff. And I'm just like, you need to calm down, like you're freaking out. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, I think I was more calm because I think at that point we didn't know what it was. But I mean, I was definitely scared because of her tone of voice and her wanting to get me into the oncologist immediately. So we go home, and this is pretty private, but like we also, I think we were both, Joe was like getting really emotional. I think everything was sinking in, like the possibility of everything. And I think like potentially me having cervical cancer and us not knowing how serious that was, like I think that was really scary to him, like him potentially losing me. We just got married in April, and so I think that kind of freaked him out. And yeah, so I think Joe was super supportive, and we went to the oncologist together the next day. And I was like a straight-faced woman, like I was just like trying to keep it together. I think that was like why I had such a straight face. And like I think the nurse, my last name is O, like spelled O-H, and I think the nurse called me. She was like, oh, like something like patient uh-oh or something like that. I was like, you mean oh? I was like, I can't be like joking around like that right now. Like I just don't have the capacity. And like I think she was joking, and I was like, I think it's O. And I even after I realized she was joking, I was just like, yeah, like I mean, no, it was just the joke just landed flat for me. And go in, the doctor sees me scared again, and she's like even more concerned. And this is an oncologist, like specialist, so I'm just like, oh my god, like what in the world is happening? Basically she's like, this could be really bad to the point where you might have to terminate your pregnancy. And I was like, what? She was like, it could be so bad, like And they were like my OBGYN the day before was like, oh, it looks so bad. And then the oncologist looks at it, she's like, oh, it looks really bad. I'm like, okay, like we don't have any results yet, but they're both freaking out. And so I'm just like, okay. And she's like, I know we're waiting for the other biopsy, but we need to get you into another, like a more invasive biopsy, like next Friday. And I look over to Joe, I'm like, what is happening? And so thank God Joe was there. He was like more of like, okay, like, so you said this, you said that, like, what about this, what about that, like asking her questions. And like, it was so nice to have a second person there, because I'm just like, what? I was kind of going in and out. So that happened, and then I think after she left, well, towards the end I was like crying more, and like I think the potential of losing the baby was really scary. And I was like, okay, like what? So yeah, so then they scheduled me in for surgery, like biopsy surgery, the Friday after, where it's called a cone biopsy, like a ice cream cone. So I think they like cut out like a cone piece of the cervix and to do a biopsy, but she wants to at the same time take out anything that looks cancerous to the naked eye, or to the eye of whatever they have put on their eyes. So they wanted to do that, and they wanted to stitch up my cervix. How wonderful. They want to stitch it up so that it remains tight, so that I don't give birth too early. I mean, I think at that time, I think I was at 12 weeks and a half-ish. 13 weeks. I think the surgery was at 13 weeks, I think. So, and the stitching is called cerclage. So I'm getting the cone biopsy and the cerclage the Friday after, and I have to go under general anesthesia. And that's what happened. And at this point, like, I haven't even told a lot of people that I was pregnant, but like, even my mom, I didn't tell yet. So I call her, I'm like, hey, I'm pregnant. Also, by the way, I might also have cervical cancer. And I'm like, oh God. I'm like, I told family in Korea, like my aunts and uncles and a few friends in person, like, because we're like meeting up with them, and we're just like, we have to tell them, like, we can't, yeah, this is not something like we can hide. It's just such a big thing that's like occupying our minds and our thoughts. We also wanted them to be part of it. Our friends are so wonderful and super supportive, and I did want to get closer to them and like build a stronger, like more intimate relationship with them, and this was kind of my way of doing so. And so yeah, told them. And another big part of this is like, never mind my own emotions. I'm pretty stern, I think, and I think I keep myself together for the most part. I do get very, very depressed, which did happen, but otherwise I'm okay. But like, the huge wide range of emotions and reactions you get when you tell these people is like crazy. And also just having to deal with all that, like, gosh, like, I mean, especially these like my Asian family members, wonderful family members, but it's just like very strong reactions sometimes. Very interesting ones, like almost like a denial ones that ranges from, oh, don't believe the doctors, just trust in God, it's probably not even true, to, why don't you get a second opinion, like, you should go to this doctor, you should go to this hospital, like, why aren't you listening, like, why aren't you doing what I say, like, you should go to the best hospital, like not the hospital you're going to, blah blah blah. So yeah, there was a lot. It wasn't that much, but there was a lot. And so I think my advice here as a short break is, if someone tells you, I think what kind of response I appreciate the most is them just listening, not freaking out, like just listening. Yeah, they will be surprised and shocked, but not like, oh my gosh, like I'm so sorry, like that's so like terrible, like what can I do, blah 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 blah. Like I don't need all those like frantic emotions. Like I think just calmness and like sturdiness and like just trusting us and just telling us that they trust us, they know that we'll get through this together, and like that they know that God will be with us, that they will be praying for us, and that they'll be there for us for whatever that's needed. That's literally the best reaction. And if you send me food, even better. Or like I had a few friends visit, which was so nice. And after the surgery, like following the surgery, like dropping food off, like texting to meet up with me, and texting to like drop food off. They make their own food, and I really appreciated that so much. It felt so much support. And also all the prayers that we received was just insane, and we literally just felt the power of prayer over us. Like that could be a whole nother episode, but like that was also a very crazy feeling. Like power of prayer was real. But anyways, I had the surgery. It's pretty scary. You have to go to the OR. I'm under general anesthesia, and I go through the surgery. I'm like crying. I wasn't crying, but then as we get closer to the OR, like going into the OR room, I started crying. And then I think after I saw the bed, that looks like a freaking execution table. It has like long bed, and it has two like supports for your arms, like so you're like this, but you're laying down. And I'm like, what is going on? But yeah, I mean, thankfully I didn't have my legs up while they were giving me general anesthesia. Also, they gave me an option to either do epidural, like just to not paralyzed, anesthesia, put it just on the bottom half of your body or your full body. And I was like, just give me the full, knock me out. I don't want to see anything. So that's what I did. I did general anesthesia. I don't know what they gave me. I have to ask them because it was terrible recovering from that. But basically after the surgery, it took about an hour and a half. And then I think I was in the recovery area maybe for like 20 minutes or so. They brought me down to like the more like lower level holding area, which Joe was able to meet me there. And I was super nauseous, or I was in pain, and I got 2 oxycodones. My first time getting oxys, and I was like throwing up. I was nauseous. They gave me Zofran and IV, and then I was nauseous, and I threw up like just like just comes out like a lot of liquid. And I was like, what just happened? And yeah, and then I had to use the bathroom. Which was a requirement to get discharged. So Joe took me back home via Uber. That day was like the worst day of my life. Come home, and I can't eat anything. Like anything I put in my mouth, I throw up immediately, or throw it out immediately, or like a couple hours later. I'm like completely like digestive system is not working at all. And I am going to bed, waking up, trying to eat, throwing up, going back to bed, trying to eat, throwing up, going like for 24 hours. I think I did that. I was like, oh my gosh. But then miraculously the next day I woke up and I felt so much better. Like I literally felt like a new person. Like I walked out to Central Park. I think I walked about 20 minutes. It started to hurt a little bit, like down there, like so we like sat on a bench and like he had to help me get up and start walking again to get back home, but otherwise it was okay. And even that afternoon I went out again. I think I went out by myself, and I think I was reading at a park or something, and I hit like 10,000 steps that day. Because they were like, you can't do any exercise, blah blah blah, no high impact exercise. So I'm like, oh yeah, then I'm gonna walk. Then you said I could walk, so I'm gonna walk. So I think for 6 straight days after that I was like, all right, then I'm gonna freaking walk. You tell me I can't do anything else, I'm gonna walk. So I walk like 10,000 steps at least per day. And yeah, and I saw the OBGYN as a checkup the week after, and she said everything's good. And yeah, so now I'm like just kind of getting back in the swing of things. And the baby's safe, baby's fine. They said, they called me I think the Thursday after the surgery, and they were like, we got everything out, and like it was CIN3, which is like, I think it's precancerous, but it hasn't like reached any like major like organs like glands or anything where it would start spreading throughout the body, or at least more in the area. And they're like, it hasn't really spread yet, and we're able to get it out everything during the surgery, so I think we're good. And we're like, yay. And Jill was like really happy, and I think I was also relieved. And yeah, that's the end of the story. I mean, I'm still bleeding a little bit, and I'm really tired of bleeding, honestly, during this pregnancy. But yeah, I did that, and yeah. So at the end of the day, I don't have cervical cancer. I had CIN3, which is precancerous, which could have developed into cancer, but hasn't. So yeah, baby's still in there. Well, just the thing is, like, because of the cerclage, they are worried that it would fall out if I jump around or something. So they're like, no high impact, no hit, no tennis. I specifically asked tennis. And then what else did they say? No jogging, like no like repetitive squats or anything like that. She said I should just do yoga or bar. And so I took a yoga class this morning. I did elliptical 30 minutes. And yeah, it's fine. Elliptical it did hurt me a little bit when I did it for the first time. But the second time I did it, which was the day after, it wasn't hurting much at all. And I felt a little bit of something, but I'm like, I feel a little bit of something even when I'm like home on my couch, like if I stretch my legs in a weird position or something. So I just finished my elliptical workout. So yeah, that's like my story. And yeah, I mean, so other things I can't do is traveling. I had a trip planned to Korea and Japan. I think I'm gonna have to cancel that. I think the main reason is they don't want me above ground for 16 hours. And they're like, what if you start bleeding at that time? They're like, I personally would not recommend it. And the doctor, and she's like, what if you start bleeding? And like 3 hours into the 16-hour flight, and even if you can land, like, you don't even know where you're gonna land. What if you're in the middle of nowhere, which is very possible because Korea, you go up to Canada, like really high up to like Alaska, not even like Anchorage. It goes like really like, it just makes a huge like circle down, and like part of the time I'll be like over the Pacific Ocean, and so there's no hospitals there, which will be an issue. So she's like, oh, like, blah blah. I'm like, oh, darn it. Like the more she was saying it, I was like, I think that we'll have to cancel the trip. So we already had to cancel one trip because of the procedure, and hopefully we get the money back. Please, Chase Reserve, I believe in you. Please pay me back. And I really hope for the Korea trips too, that they will pay me back. So yeah, that would be a huge win if we can get some money back, because the surgery was uber expensive. And yeah, that's my story. I'm right now in week 14 and 2 days. And yeah, did the check last Friday. The baby has two kidneys, 2 brain hemispheres, 2 lungs, 1 stomach, 2 feet, 2 arms, like 2 of everything that you're supposed to have of. So that's very good. And yeah, so we're at second trimester now, so we'll see what happens, like how second trimester goes, but I don't know. I'm still planning a gender reveal party, and we are right now, I think we're very excited about the baby, and we're very hopeful, but I think just because we've gone through so many ups and downs of like fear and unknowns about the baby, and so we are a little bit cautiously excited, and I think the possibility of losing the baby during this pregnancy is it's small, I think, but I think it's always there in the back of our minds. But I was just so excited to plan the gender reveal party, and I was like, we're talking and we're like, and I think I was like, hey, like this is still our baby, and whatever happens to it, it will still be ours, and it's still precious, and so we still love it, and I still want to do a gender reveal party regardless of what happens. Even if it doesn't make it to the world living, it's still living now, so we still want to celebrate that, and I want to still give it a gender reveal party. So also, I just really like planning parties. So we were planning a fall theme one, and we'll see how the rest of the second trimester goes. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you have any questions related to the subchorionic hematoma I had at week 6, or any of the cervical cancer related, like the diagnosis, or like the cone biopsy, recovery period, what it was like, or the cerclage, happy to answer any questions. So yeah, let me know in the comments, and hope to see you in the next video. Bye.